3 years ago, a mother managed to convince the court to strip away a father's parental rights through carefully orchestrated lies and manipulation. When the father finally secured a chance to have his case reheard, she strode into the courtroom full of confidence, certain no one could see through her facade. But when it was the young girl's turn to speak, her shocking revelation would leave the entire courtroom in stunned silence. In the solemn halls of justice, where truth battles deception, one mother's web of lies unraveled in a single moment of raw honesty from the child caught in the middle, exposing how manipulation can fracture families and how courage can rebuild them. This is the gripping story of Julia Carter, a 12-year-old girl battling leukemia and a broken home, whose quiet bravery in the face of fear and coercion turned a custody battle into a powerful testament to the enduring strength of a father's love and a daughter's truth. For 7 long years, Jonathan Carter had fought in shadows, denied access to his daughter while Karen Blake painted him as the villain, but today the courtroom would hear Julia's voice cut through the lies like a beacon of light. Historical records of family courts worldwide, from the early 20th century reforms in the U.S. that emphasized the best interest of the child, standard following the progressive era's push against domestic abuse, to modern cases documented by organizations like the American Bar Association highlighting parental alienation tactics, remind us that manipulation in custody disputes has long tested the scales of justice, often leaving children as silent casualties until one brave voice breaks the silence. For English learners, this tale offers profound language lessons. The idiom, orchestrated lies, means carefully planned deceptions, while facade of confidence describes a false outward appearance of assurance hiding inner doubt, expressions that help you describe real-world conflicts with precision and emotional depth. As we journey through Julia's day in court, we witness not only the drama of a legal reckoning but also timeless lessons in integrity, the power of a child's truth, and the universal wisdom that justice ultimately favors the honest heart over the clever tongue. What would you do if forced to choose between loyalty to a parent and loyalty to the truth? Would fear silence you, or would courage compel you to speak, proving that even the smallest voice can echo through halls of power and change lives forever? The marble steps of the courthouse rose like an unyielding judge as 12-year-old Julia Carter arrived with her mother Karen Blake, the crisp morning air heavy with a knot of anxiety twisting in the girl's stomach. Historical echoes of family justice resonate through centuries, from ancient Roman courts where fathers held patria potestas, the absolute legal power over children, until the 19th century women's rights movements and child protection laws in Britain and America began shifting focus to the child's welfare, culminating in the modern best interest of the child standard established in landmark cases like the 1925 Guardianship of Infants Act, reminding us that custody battles have always been arenas where power, manipulation, and truth collide. Julia's small frame seemed to shrink further inside her oversized clothes as she followed her mother's hurried steps, Karen's high heels clicking sharply against the concrete like accusations waiting to be spoken, her glamorous appearance a calculated mask of composure designed to sway the court. Their lawyer Thomas Hale greeted them with practiced calm, reminding Karen of their strategy to portray Julia's leukemia struggles as natural progression rather than neglect, while Karen drummed her fingers impatiently on her designer purse, dismissing concerns about her flashy outfit and the faint scent of alcohol lingering from the flask security had confiscated earlier. Vivid character moments unfolded as Julia's eyes darted nervously around the imposing stone facade, her quiet obedience masking the storm of fear and loyalty warring within her young heart, especially when she caught sight of her father Jonathan across the hallway, his neat suit and warm smile a stark contrast to the tension radiating from her mother. The idiom, knot in her stomach, perfectly captures that sickening twist of anxiety, while facade of confidence describes Karen's false outward assurance hiding her desperation, advanced English expressions that empower learners to narrate internal conflict and social deception with nuance and impact. Philosophical teaching here draws from the universal wisdom that truth has a quiet power stronger than any lie, echoing Socrates' emphasis on honest inquiry in ancient Athens and modern psychological insights into how suppressed truths erode the soul, urging personal growth by challenging us to examine whether we choose silence for comfort or courage for clarity. For English learners, the story models compelling descriptive language. Eyes darted nervously, quick, anxious glances revealing inner turmoil, and weight of the day ahead, the heavy emotional burden of impending events, tools for crafting vivid personal or fictional narratives. As security checks and whispered strategies filled the hallway, Julia slipped away briefly to embrace her father in a stolen moment of warmth, his gentle words reminding her she was his priority, a fleeting oasis of love amid the courtroom's growing storm. How often do we hide our true feelings behind obedience or appearances, and what courage might we find if we chose instead to let our honest voice be heard, even when the consequences feel too heavy to bear? The courtroom doors opened with solemn finality as Judge William Hardy took his seat, his measured gaze sweeping over the assembled parties and settling briefly on Julia's small, shrinking figure between her mother and the court-appointed advocate. Historical developments in family law trace back to the early 20th century when progressive reformers in the United States pushed for child-centered custody decisions following exposés on domestic abuse and neglect in urban tenements, evolving through landmark rulings that prioritized evidence over parental claims. Much like today's emphasis on psychological evaluations and medical records in cases involving childhood illness. Opening statements crackled with tension as Rebecca Green, Jonathan's lawyer, presented a compelling case of financial misuse and emotional harm, displaying spreadsheets and bank records showing thousands diverted from Julia's care to Karen's luxury purchases and alcohol, while Thomas countered by framing Karen. Defiance, as witness after witness testified, the forensic accountant detailing unauthorized withdrawals as a devoted single mother overwhelmed by leukemia's demands. Vivid character moments captured Karen's growing agitation, her leg bouncing nervously, eyes flashing with, the school counselor describing Julia's unexplained absences and bruises, and the child psychologist outlining patterns of fear and withdrawal consistent with long-term abuse. The idiom overwhelming evidence describes proof so strong it cannot be ignored, while crackled with tension, evokes the electric atmosphere of unspoken conflict, powerful English tools for discussing high-stakes confrontations in reports or stories. Philosophical teaching emerges in the universal wisdom that manipulation thrives in silence, but withers in truth, drawing from ancient Greek concepts of parrhesia, bold truth-telling, and contemporary trauma-informed care that emphasizes giving voice to the voiceless, encouraging personal growth by asking us to consider how our own unspoken truths might be holding us captive. For English learners, the narrative provides rich examples of advanced phrasing, facade crumbling, a false image beginning to break apart under pressure, and weight of evidence, the heavy impact of accumulated facts, helping you articulate moral reckonings with clarity and emotional resonance. As Julia sat silently, her hands twisting in her lap and eyes darting between her parents, the cumulative testimonies painted a devastating picture of neglect, mistreatments, and locked medicine cabinets, causing Karen's composure to fracture into outbursts that only further damaged her credibility. When the judge called for Julia to speak, the courtroom held its breath, her small voice cutting through the silence like a ray of light exposing years of carefully constructed deception. This chapter reveals that justice often waits for the quietest voice to rise, teaching us that withholding truth for fear of consequences only prolongs suffering, while speaking it sets freedom in motion. When silence feels safer than truth, what inner strength do you call upon to break it? And how might your honest words today become the turning point that restores balance and heals what manipulation has broken? When it was finally Julia's turn to speak, the 12-year-old removed her wig with trembling hands, revealing her bald head marked with bruises and partially healed wounds from neglect, leaving the entire courtroom in stunned silence as she bravely recounted the abuse, mismedications, and locked cabinets that had defined her life under her mother's care. Historical precedents of child testimony in court trace to the 19th century British and American reforms inspired by cases like the 1874 Mary Ellen Wilson abuse trial, which led to the founding of the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children and established that children's voices could pierce adult facades of respectability. a principle reinforced in modern family courts through guardian ad litem programs that prioritize the child's perspective. Vivid character moments unfolded as Julia's small voice grew steadier with each word, describing her mother's drinking, violent outbursts with shoes or remotes, and the fear that kept her silent, while Karen's face contorted in rage and Jonathan's eyes filled with anguished love, his fists clenched under the table in restrained fury. The idiom "cut through the lies" means exposing deception with undeniable truth, while stunned silence describes a room frozen in shock, essential English expressions for narrating dramatic revelations and moral reckonings. Philosophical teaching centers on the universal wisdom that a child's truth carries the weight of innocence that no adult lie can match, echoing biblical calls for justice for the vulnerable and contemporary child psychology, emphasizing that giving voice to the silence restores agency and begins healing, urging personal growth by challenging us to protect the honest voices around us rather than dismissing them as inconvenient. For English learners, the story models powerful emotional language, heart clenched, sudden painful tightening from empathy or fear, facade shattered, false image completely destroyed, and bravely recounted, courageously telling difficult experiences, equipping you to describe family trauma and courage with sensitivity and impact. As Julia detailed the isolation, missed-school, and emotional manipulation, the judge's expression hardened, leading to immediate orders transferring full custody to Jonathan, mandating Karen's psychological evaluation and alcohol rehabilitation, and appointing a guardian ad litem for Julia's transition. Karen's final outburst and removal from the courtroom marked the collapse of her carefully built lies, while Julia's tearful embrace with her father symbolized the beginning of safety and reconnection. This chapter affirms that courage in speaking truth, even from the smallest voice, can topple towers of deception and restore what was stolen. When the world expects you to stay silent to keep peace, what quiet strength inside you might rise to speak for justice? And how could your honest words today become the foundation for healing not only your own heart, but the hearts of those who have waited years to hear the truth? In the tender aftermath of the courtroom victory, as Jonathan and Julia stepped into their new life together under the warm afternoon sun, the father-daughter bond began its slow, beautiful mending, proving that love and truth can rebuild what manipulation had nearly destroyed forever. Historical journeys of family restoration mirror this moment, from the post-Civil War reunifications of separated families in America to modern international efforts by groups like the Hague Conference on Private International Law that facilitate cross-border custody resolutions, showing that justice systems, though imperfect, have evolved to prioritize children's voices and parental accountability across generations. Emotional development blossomed as Jonathan knelt beside Julia outside the courthouse, promising to make time despite his busy work schedule, his gentle sign language, "I love you," bridging the years of separation and bringing a genuine smile to her face for the first time that day. Vivid character moments included their first swim in the backyard pool, laughter echoing as the tiny girl splashed with joy. Her bald head no longer a source of shame but a badge of survival under her father's protective care, while evenings brought quiet talks where Julia shared her fears and Jonathan listened without judgment. The idiom "slow mending" describes the gradual healing of deep emotional wounds, while "badge of survival" refers to scars transformed into symbols of strength, rich English metaphors that help learners express recovery and resilience in personal essays or conversations. Philosophical teaching reaches its heart in the universal wisdom that truth sets us free, but love keeps us whole, drawing from ancient scriptural promises and modern therapeutic approaches like attachment theory that emphasize secure relationships as the foundation for healing trauma, encouraging personal growth by asking us to examine whether our relationships build walls or bridges. For English learners, the narrative offers a masterclass in reflective storytelling, weight lifted from her shoulders, relief after releasing a heavy burden, echoing with joy, sounds repeating happily through space, and fragile hope, delicate but growing optimism, tools for crafting inspiring personal or motivational narratives with emotional authenticity. As weeks turn to months, Julia's health stabilized under consistent medical care, her laughter returned during family outings, and Jonathan adjusted his schedule to be present, proving that dedicated fatherhood transcends work demands. The guardian ad litem's regular check-ins and therapy sessions helped Julia process her trauma, while supervised visits with Karen, now in rehabilitation, offered cautious steps toward possible future reconciliation. This final chapter celebrates that justice is not merely punishment but restoration, teaching us that the bravest act is often a child's honest words, and the greatest reward is a parent's unwavering commitment to make things right. When life offers you a second chance at family, do you cling to old grievances or open your arms to new beginnings, discovering that the strongest homes are built not on perfection but on the courage to forgive, heal, and love without conditions? The story of Julia and Jonathan reminds every listener that no lie can permanently silence truth, and no distance can truly break a bond rooted in genuine care. May we all find the strength to speak our truths and the heart to rebuild what was broken.